I know you're with me, and I never take your company for granted, especially on days like today. So first of all, I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you who's been tuning into the channel. A big shout out to John Brennan, Lorraine Morrissey, and Frank Bowe. I'm sure those three, among many others, must have gotten quite the surprise hearing their names shouted out at 7 in the morning, but that's the reward you get for subscribing to the channel. Hopefully none of you were driving when I did that, but seriously, these three, along with all of our other subscribers, have helped us reach a huge milestone, 14,000 subscribers. This is such exciting news, and I couldn't be more pumped about it. But now let me ask, can we get to 15,000? That's the next goal. I'm absolutely buzzing with how far we've come, and to keep this momentum going, we need to push even harder. But here's the question. What's going to happen first? Will we hit 15,000 subscribers, or will Celtic win the league title? It's honestly going to be tight, but based on how things are going with the team, right now I think the 15,000 milestone might come first, so if you're not already subscribed, please do consider it. We're so close and it's completely free. Let's get there together. But let's move on, because today's show has a bit more of an upbeat vibe. As much as the weekend was tough and we've had some frustrating results over the last few weeks, we are in fact on the cusp of winning the league title. That's right, we could be champions in just 5 or 6 days. So let's try to keep that in mind and stay positive about where we're at. Sure, there's been some disappointment recently, but we're in a fantastic position and we need to hold on to that. There's plenty more to talk about today as well. First up, I want to talk about Callum McGregor, the captain, who recently shared some thoughts on the team's current form. Last night, some quotes from McGregor were released, and he addressed the issue of complacency creeping into the squad's performances. McGregor said, "It's about trying to guard against complacency as much as possible, getting the most out of the players and leading by example as a senior player. When we step onto the pitch, we need to drive the intensity of the game, and overall, we've done that pretty well. Although Sunday was a tough one, we've put ourselves in an amazing position with plenty of games still to play." But that's when people start thinking it's inevitable that we'll just turn up and win, and that's where we've dropped the ball and let a goal in. When that happens, it makes everything look bad, and we need to snap out of that mentality quickly. It's difficult to get over the line when you're so close, and while the points gap is comfortable, we still have to do everything we can to cross that line, not just wait for it to happen. He continued by saying that sometimes football has a funny way of keeping you grounded, and with so much football still to be played, it's a constant reminder to stay sharp for every minute of every match. McGregor's words are pretty revealing, and although he's been cautious in how he said it, it's clear he feels complacency has crept into the team's mentality, and honestly, that's not news to anyone who's been watching Celtic recently. If you compare our performances now to those from earlier in the season, it's obvious that the intensity has dropped, and that same drive just doesn't seem to be there as much anymore. And this isn't just a recent thing. This issue of complacency has been creeping in for a while now. We've been seeing it for months, even before we were on the verge of clinching the league title. McGregor's comments have certainly highlighted something that's been building up over time. When you look at our last 32 games since that standout performance against Leipzig, you can clearly see the drop-off. I've even split those matches into categories just out of pure curiosity. I've got them in a way that might seem a bit random, but it helps to understand what's been happening since Leipzig. First off, there were some brilliant games in that stretch. We had a lot of home victories, like a 50 win over Ross County, a 40 over Motherwell, a 40 against St. Johnstone, and a 60 against Dundee, among others. Some of these were memorable, and even though I don't particularly recall every detail of games like the Motherwell and St. Johnstone matches, I know we played well, and looking back, they were solid performances. Of course, there was that fantastic 11 draw with Bayern Munich, which despite the last-minute equalizer, was probably the best performance we've had since Leipzig. In fact, that game might have even been better than Leipzig, considering we were away from home in Munich against one of the biggest clubs in Europe. Then there were a few matches that went in the got the win but not great category. We did win, but the performances left a lot to be desired. There's a cup final in there where we won on penalties but didn't exactly impress during the 90 minutes. The same goes for the Young Boys match. Not a great display, but we came out with the result. There was also that 51 victory over Aberdeen, which sounds great on paper, but honestly, the performance was anything but. Then came the average category, which consists mostly of our Champions League matches. To be fair, we were playing against stronger teams, so a bit of leeway is given. But the results and performances in games like the 11 draw with Club Brugge, the 0-0 away to Zagreb, the 21 loss at home to Bayern Munich, and the 42 defeat away to Aston, Villa weren't exactly inspiring. I've grouped those into the average category, and they show that we weren't quite reaching the standard we set earlier in the season. Finally, there's the grim category, and that's where things get a bit more concerning. We've had some games where we've just looked off the pace, like the 0-0 draw with Dundee United, the 30 loss at Ibrox, the 33 draw at Dundee, which could have easily been a loss, and the 21 defeat to Hibs. Of course, we also had the disappointing home loss to Rangers and that shocking defeat to St. Johnstone just last Sunday. You might disagree with how I've categorized these games, but the point I'm trying to make is that we haven't seen many standout performances since Leipzig. Sure, we've had some decent wins, but overall we've been coasting, getting by rather, than dominating. If you compare these 32 games to the first part of the season up until Leipzig, I bet you'd find a lot more matches in the excellent category back then. We started the season with so much energy and momentum, and somewhere along the way that fizzled out. So we've got to stay positive, right? We're still in a great position, and the title is within reach. But we also need to recognize that something needs to change. I've been saying it for a while now. We need to get back to that level of intensity we had at the start of the season. We've got a few weeks left to sort it out, and with the right adjustments, we can still finish strong. So moving forward, how do we fix things? The most obvious solution, in my opinion, is to make some changes to the team. I touched on this a bit yesterday, but it really feels like we have too many players who aren't performing well, but are still guaranteed their spot in the starting lineup week after week. And I'm not sure if that's down to the manager's trust in certain players, or if it's a sign that the whole squad has gotten a bit complacent. Looking back to the start of the season, we were constantly making changes to the team. Even when we only had one match a week, there was real competition. 4 places, and the players on the bench knew they could come in and make an impact. It was a good dynamic and everyone seemed to be firing, but we just don't have that anymore. At this point, I think it's safe to say that this Celtic team has become a bit stale, and I'm not sure if that's down to Brendan Rodgers not trusting the players on the fringes to step in and make a difference, or if it's just a case of him being too comfortable with the starting lineup. Of course, we've had some injuries recently, and if players like Paulo Bernardo, James Forrest, and others had been fit, we would have probably seen them get more game time. But even so, the fact remains that the team has stagnated. Looking ahead to the match against Kilmarnock this Saturday, we need to see changes. I'm pretty sure we're past the point where we'll see a reaction from the same players who've been underperforming. If we keep fielding the same team, we'll just see more of the same. We need fresh legs and a fresh mindset. There are certain players who need to be dropped from the starting 11, and that could give the team the spark they need. I've seen a few people online suggesting that putting players like Nicholas on the bench might actually motivate them to get their hunger back. I'm not entirely convinced that's going to work with Nicholas, but we can't rule anything out. As for my lineup for Saturday, here's what I'm thinking. In goal, I'd go with Vyacheslav Alo. I think he's deserved the chance to start, and it's time to see what he can bring to the table. In defense, I'd bring in Anthony Ralston for Alistair Johnston. I know Johnston's a fan favorite, but I've got to say he's not been performing well lately. Ralston, on the other hand, has been solid when called upon, so he deserves a shot. Next to him, I'd stick with Carter Vickers, though I know there's been some debate about his form. Stevie isn't exactly happy with Carter Vickers at the moment, but in my eyes, he's still one of the more reliable defenders we have. If Scales is back for this one, I'd partner him with Carter Vickers, but I'm not sure if Scales will make it. Mike Naropski has also been mentioned, but I get the feeling that Brendan Rodgers doesn't fancy him for this kind of game. So I'll stick with Carter Vickers and hope Scales is fit. Moving on to left back, I stick with Jota. He's had his fair share of criticism, and I'll admit he hasn't been at his best in a couple of matches, but we have to be fair. Greg Taylor didn't exactly make an impact when he came on against St. Johnstone. So for me, it's Jota for now, and we'll see how it goes. As for midfield, I think Callum McGregor should stay in the center, but we need a shake-up around him. Luke McCowan and Paulo Bernardo need to come into the side. I'm not saying McCowan is perfect, but when he came on against St. Johnstone, you could see an improvement in the tempo of the game, And Paulo Bernardo is a player with a lot of promise. The midfield has been one of the weakest parts of the team lately, and I believe bringing in these two could inject some much-needed energy into the middle of the park. It's been too stale in there, and a bit of freshness is exactly what we need right now. Up front, it's non-negotiable that Yang has to start. I'm confident that Brendan Rodgers is going to go with him over Nicholas, and if Yang doesn't start well, you can all hold me to that. I'll gladly give away $5 to each of you. The way he's been playing, there's no way he's not in there. Starting 11, Yang has been absolutely electric lately, and I think he'll offer that extra spark we need up front. Nicholas hasn't shown the same hunger or sharpness, and while he's a talented player, it's clear that he's not at the level he should be. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up on the bench for this one. Now I know some of you might want even more changes than I've proposed. I've seen suggestions to bring James Forrest in on the left, or to start Greg Taylor at left back, or even to drop Callum McGregor from the starting 11. But I'm not convinced that dropping McGregor is the answer. Yes, he's been inconsistent recently, but he's still one of the most influential players on the pitch. As for the others, I get it. There's frustration with how certain players have been performing. But the reality is that we have too many players underperforming, and something needs to change. We need a reaction from this team, and making these changes could be the key to unlocking that. So in summary, I think if we start the match against Kilmarnock with the lineup I've suggested, we'll see a better performance. The players who've been underperforming need to be dropped, and fresh blood needs to come in to give the team the kickstart it so desperately needs. If these changes work and the team responds positively, we'll keep going with that squad for the next few games. But if not, we'll have to make further adjustments. But I really believe this team needs to feel the pressure of competition for places again. Too many players are feeling comfortable, and that's the last thing we need when we're on the verge of a league title. Before I finish, I want to touch on Ari Engels, who's been the subject of a lot of talk lately. Over the past few weeks, especially since Sunday's disappointing result, opinions on Engels have been all over the place. There are some who think he's a total waste of money, with some even suggesting that we should move him on, while others believe there's still potential in him, and with a full preseason he could come good next year. I'm in the second camp. I genuinely believe that with more time to adapt and develop, Engels will prove his worth to Celtic. It's been a tough first season for him, there's no denying that, and he's certainly underperformed in certain areas. But he's not the only one. As for his price tag, yes, it's a big fee, but we need to remember that he's still a young player, and it's going to take time for him to adjust to life in Scotland. Looking back at Matt O'Reilly's first season, he had a rocky start too. It wasn't until his second season that he really started to show his true potential, and I think the same thing could happen with Engels. Brendan Rodgers has said it himself that Engels is a player with great potential, and that it's his job to help him reach it. Yes, he needs to step up and have more of an impact on games, but I firmly believe we'll see a much improved Ari Engels next season. In the meantime, we have to keep pushing for the title. We can't let this complacency set in. We're so close, and with the right changes, the right mentality, and a bit of hunger, we can still finish this season strong and claim the league title. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. A swirling rumor is sending shockwaves through Scottish football, and it's one that Celtic fans will want to hear twice to believe. Whispers from international football circles suggest that FIFA may have extended a special invitation to Glasgow Giant Celtic to compete in the inaugural FIFA Super Club World Cup. No official confirmation has landed yet, but the mere suggestion of the hoops mixing with the elite of world football has already ignited feverish debate across social media. The FIFA Super Club World Cup, set to revolutionize the traditional Club World Cup format, will bring together top clubs from every continent, not just by title, but through global football influence and historical prestige. While qualification has largely hinged on UEFA coefficients and recent Champions League performance, it appears FIFA might be leaving the door open for heritage clubs with massive fan bases and storied legacies. That's exactly where Celtic fits in. According to sources close to early tournament planning, FIFA is keen on involving clubs that transcend borders. Institutions whose history, culture, and support base represent more than just domestic success. Celtic's European Cup win in 1967, their unparalleled dominance in Scottish football, and a global following that stretches far beyond Parkhead may have caught FIFA's attention at just the right moment. While there's been no official word from Celtic FC, club insiders haven't dismissed the buzz. In fact, the timing could not be more intriguing as the club seeks to re-establish itself on the European stage. An appearance at the Super Club World Cup, potentially alongside giants like Real Madrid, Flamengo, and Al Ahly, would be a remarkable nod to Celtic's iconic status and a thrilling opportunity to showcase Scottish football on a global platform. For now, fans are left to wonder, is this just hopeful hearsay or the beginning of something monumental? One thing's for sure, if the rumor proves true, Celtic Park may soon be buzzing with more than Premiership dreams. The world could be watching. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.